the shift button beep when I have the door open? What's it possibly trying to warn me of? I bought a little guy. Forgive me, I've been watching way too much jet lag. By the way, it's so hot outside. It's almost 100 degrees and it's 70% humidity. I'm gonna be a puddle in this video, forgive me. Let's go! This little guy is a think city. And yes, it is pronounced think despite having a punctuation mark for a vowel. Sadly, it's not the or exclamation point. This one is from 2011. It has a 23 kilowatt hour, when new, battery pack, a whopping 46 horsepower asynchronous induction motor, although the stamp on the frame says it's only 34 horsepower. It has textured plastic body panels with no paint, a steel base frame, and an aluminum space frame for the body that was originally designed by Peter Rawlinson when he worked for Lotus in the 90s. Quick tour. It has 2 seats and a generous cargo area. Unless you have the Europe-only rear seat option, in which case you have 2 seats, 2 useless seats, and almost no cargo room at all. But hey, at least you get 2 grocery bag hooks. The hatchback is all glass, the fuses are all here, and the cup holders are useless. The doors are this thick silver painted aluminum with this funky door insert. This is not a speaker. It has a funky twin arm single blade windshield wiper. There is no glove box. The climate controls are a simple analog 3-dial setup. The gauge cluster is also a simple analog 3-dial setup. This is the original radio, some off-the-shelf single-din head unit from Sony. The shifter is this big chonky thing that mechanically actuates the parking pawl in the gearbox. Think! Many of the switches are Ford parts, like this, these, this whole steering wheel, and probably other bits that I'm not aware of. It has a quirky repeating bar pattern in the headliner, in the B-pillar, in the C-pillar, and on the hatch. These taillights are just off the shelf, and they're shared with a few other high-production, low-cost cars, like the Lamborghini Diablo. And it has a hood! It's tiny. And now there's no frunk. All the gubbins are in here, like the whole motor and inverter. The battery's right here, this extremely obvious hump under the front seats. It has a 3.3 kilowatt onboard charger, no DC fast charging, and a claimed range of 100 miles when it was new. It is objectively not fast, but it is a lot of fun. It's like a happy puppy, with perhaps an iron deficiency. This is not the first Think City I've had on video. A full 7 years ago, I made a video with a Think City in red. That video is very old and very terrible. Please don't go watch it. But I bring that video up because of the car that's in it. Here it is. This is that car. It's been in an accident, it's been stripped of all its big important parts, and now it's ready to either be scrapped or turned into something amazing. But probably scrapped. We'll come back to this later. It seems as though I brought the whale to the river again. You know what that means. This video is sponsored by Factor. Factor is ready-to-heat meals delivered straight to your door. Much more convenient than meal planning and grocery store trips, and much less garbage than fast food or other takeout. So when you're hungry, all you do is pick your meal, slide off the cardboard cover, stab the film to vent it, and then pop it in your frunculator or microwave for the amount of time specified on the bottom of the container. In this case, 5 minutes total. 5 minutes later, I've got a hot meal ready to consume and a barge to look at. Now this is basil barramundi, which is delightful, but it wasn't the smartest choice to bring to a beach that reeks of dead fish. Still good, but not a great environment to consume this. Actually though, this is really good. This is fish from a microwave. It has no right to be this good. As always with Factor, you have a variety of meals to choose from. Keto, calorie smart, vegan, whatever you prefer. I like Factor first and foremost because it's good, but it also helps me with portion control. This barge is called Kirby. If you want to try Factor for yourself, and I highly recommend you do, to go to factor75.com and use code AGINGWHEELSFB50 at checkout for 50% off plus free breakfast for a year. Again, that's code AGINGWHEELSFB50 for 50% off plus free breakfast for a year at factor75.com. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video. I'm glad I finished the ad before a loud boy got here. Since I made that terrible video 7 years ago, I've learned a lot more about the history of the Think City, almost entirely from this article written by Øystein Aspjell, one of the people from the engineering team that developed the Think, og oversatt fra norsk til engelsk fra Kristin Orskog. This article is an interesting read. If you want to check it out in its entirety, there'll be a link in the description. To summarize, the Personal Independent Vehicle Company, or PIVCO, started as an offshoot of a Norwegian plastics company in 1991. The goal of this company was to produce small vehicles suitable for a city environment and to use some of the plastics technology from the plastics company it was an offshoot of. The goal of this company was not to produce vehicles that were electric, but every vehicle they ever produced did happen to be electric. Early on, they made some prototypes. Several of their second-generation prototypes, called the PIVCO City Bee, were used in the 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer. Later on, they made a small production test run of their third-generation car design, still called the PIVCO City Bee. 120 were produced in total, 65 were used in Norway, and 45 were used in the San Francisco area by Bay Area Rapid Transit. These City Bees were a lot of things, but what they were not was regulation compliant. All the cars that were sent to the Bay Area were only there temporarily and had to be sent back to Norway after just 3 years. In 1998, PIVCO finished development of their fourth-generation car design with help from Lotus, and this one, unlike the past three, was regulation compliant as an actual car, the development of which cost them all of their money and they went bankrupt. PIVCO's last act as a company with money was to take their newly completed and perfected fourth-generation prototypes, as well as nearly every employee from the company, to the Geneva Motor Show to make a big splash. And this is where, supposedly, they were discovered by Ford. In 1999, Ford bought PIVCO. Now, this article claims that Ford bought PIVCO because it was cheaper to buy this company with an already designed EV than it was to design an EV themselves to satisfy the zero-emission vehicle mandate set forth by the California Air Resources Board of the time. However, Ford had already designed their own EV, the Ranger EV, several years prior to satisfy the zero-emission vehicle mandate. So it doesn't make sense to me that that would be the reason they bought PIVCO. Regardless, Ford bought PIVCO. With direction and money from Ford, the entity formerly known as PIVCO began production of this fourth-generation car design, now called the Think City, in Norway, for both the US and Europe. About 1,200 of these cars were produced in total. These early Thinks had an adorable 36-horsepower motor and an equally adorable 12-kilowatt-hour NiCad battery pack, good for maybe 40 miles of range. And much like the later Thinks, these early Thinks had a steel base frame, an aluminum space frame for the body, and textured plastic body panels with no paint. But there was a problem with these early Thinks. They were regulation compliant as actual cars in Europe, but not in the US. They were not Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard compliant. All the roughly 250 Thinks that made their way to the US were only here temporarily. They were all leased and had to be returned at the end of their lease period, at which point most of them were sent back to Norway. By the way, Ford had some other Think branded products like an e-bike and a golf cart called the Think Neighbor. I saw a Think Neighbor at Ford Fest one year and everyone around me was wondering why I was getting so worked up about a golf cart. If only they knew. Because selling cars in the US that are not US compliant is inconvenient, Ford set their Think subsidiary to work developing a new Think City for the US that would be regulation compliant in the US. Internally, this new design was called the A306. And aside from US regulation compliance, it was also to have more niceties like cup holders and power windows. And it was to incorporate several Ford parts for presumably cost reasons. Design of the A306 commenced in 2000 and was completed in 2002. This is that A306 design of Think City. But it's not from the early 2000s, and it wasn't built by Ford. Despite fully funding its development, Ford never actually produced the A306. In 2002, the California Supreme Court struck down the zero-emission vehicle mandate, and shortly after, Ford sold off its entire Think division before a single A306 could be produced. They just dropped it. Think was sold to a company called Camcorp, who didn't really do much with it. They did some prototype development work, but never produced a single car. And then in 2006, Think was sold again, this time back to Norway, to a company containing some of the original people from PIVCO. And then finally, under this new ownership, the A306 was finally produced. 425 A306 Think Cities were produced in Norway from 2008 to 2009. Then production moved to the Valmet factory in Finland, where an additional 1,876 cars were built until 2011. There was also a U.S. factory in Elkhart, Indiana that produced cars from 2010 to 2012. but that was mostly just a point of final assembly. Most of the car, frame, etc. was produced in Finland at the Valmet factory and then shipped over to Indiana for final assembly. Cars built in Europe either had Zebra battery packs or A123 lithium iron phosphate battery packs, while cars built in Elkhart, Indiana had lithium packs from Interdel of Indianapolis. According to this article, the final production number of A306 Think Cities between Norway and Finland was 2,336 cars. Now, I don't know if that number includes cars built in Elkhart, Indiana or not, because this article makes zero mention of Think of North America. I remember reading somewhere that about 500 cars were assembled in Elkhart, but now I can't find where I read that, so that could be complete bunk. This is the Think City I've just bought. It's from 2011. It's one of the cars produced in Elkhart, Indiana with an Interdel battery pack, and it's adorned in a shade of blue that's getting lighter by the year. Oh, by the way, Think went bankrupt again in 2011. Apparently Think of North America continued on for a little after this, but when the supplier of most of your car goes bankrupt, it's a little hard to continue production. Unsurprisingly, the last car was built in Elkhart in 2012. Real quick, we gotta talk about the Zebra battery. It was 24 kilowatt hours, and I think it was only put in the cars built in Norway from 2008 to 2009, but I could be wrong about that. The Zebra battery wasn't lithium. It was sodium nickel chloride. Some of the advantages of it were that for the time it had a relatively good energy density of 120 watt hours per kilogram, it was inherently safe, and it had a pretty good cycle life of over 4,000 cycles. But a big disadvantage of it is that it had to be kept at 300 degrees Celsius for it to work. It's sometimes called the molten salt battery. The liquid sodium and the sodium aluminum tetrachloride in it had to remain molten for the battery to continue functioning. The pack would heat up and stay hot when plugged into a charger, and the only thing keeping the battery pack at temperature when it was away from a charger was the insulation surrounding the pack. If the pack was allowed to cool down and solidify, first of all, it would no longer be functional as a battery pack, but also it could take half a day to get back up to temperature again when plugged back into a charger. Who thought that was a good choice of battery for a car, especially one designed in the famously tropical climate of Norway? But anyway, my car doesn't have the ridiculous Zebra battery. It has the 23 kilowatt hour lithium battery from Interdel of Indianapolis. Unfortunately, I don't know what chemistry of lithium it is. I know that it's unfortunately not lithium iron phosphate, but that's all I know. Claimed range when new was 100 miles, but realistically it was more like 70 to 90 miles. But mine won't do that anymore. This battery has not held up well. A rough estimate based on the energy delivered by the EVSE and assuming the state of charge needle is somewhat accurate, puts the total capacity of this battery at about 12 kilowatt hours, making range maybe 40 miles? This car only has 10,000 miles on it, so how is that much degradation even possible? Well, this battery pack is 14 years old now, but that's not the reason. The reason is this battery is not original to this car. The battery pack that's in this car came from this car. I told you we'd come back to it. The blue car may only have 10,000 miles on it, but this had well over 80,000 miles on it, and the battery came out of this one. And when your battery is as small as 23 kilowatt hours, 80,000 miles translates to well over 1,000 cycles, which was likely the expected lifespan of standard, i.e. non-lithium iron phosphate, lithium cells from this era, especially when they're not actively cooled. So why does this blue car have the battery from the red car? Well, these two cars have the same previous owner, someone who's been through many things. Not in the same way as like Socrates or Aristotle. At some point along the line, there was a black Think that had been flooded and it had a destroyed battery pack. That black Think has the battery pack from this blue Think, and this blue Think got the battery pack from the red Think. Apparently it's super easy to swap battery packs in these things, and it'll probably be something we'll explore in a future video. And the reason this car is sans batterie is because it was rear-ended. The hatch shattered into a million tiny pieces, and much of the bodywork on the left rear corner was irreparably damaged, so he parted it out. Why do I have it? Well, I was holding it for someone who wanted to use this shell for a project of some sort, but they've since decided not to pursue that project. So it's just here now. Thankfully it doesn't take up much space. I'll get rid of it eventually. So while I'm not driving the same car that I was driving in that video I made 7 years ago, I am driving a car with the same battery as that car. And boy, let me tell you, this battery is cooked. I can make one trip to town and back on a charge, and that's it. And I typically come home with somewhere between 35 and 40%. That is not even a 25-mile round trip that uses 60% or more of the battery. And to make things worse, the state of charge readout slowly drifts out of accuracy while you drive. For example, in this clip you can see when I shut the car off, it was indicating 70% state of charge. I then turned the car off, let it sit for half a minute, turned it back on, and then after I turned it back on, it readjusted its state of charge estimation down. It went from an indicated 70% all the way down to an indicated 50% state of charge. This happens after every drive. What I think's happening here is when you first turn the car on, the BMS uses the resting voltage of the cells to estimate a state of charge. But as you're driving along, it keeps track of state of charge using Coulomb counting. Coulomb counting which is not taking into account the degradation of the battery pack. Again, this is purely a guess, but it seems like a reasonable explanation. This little guy has less than 50 horsepower. It is inarguably not fast. 0 to 60. I've turned air conditioning off. Let's go! While we're doing this, I suppose we can have a pleasant chat. How was your day? Was it good? I hope your day was good. Mine was good. It's pretty hot out here, though. Still haven't hit 60. And... oh boy. Oh boy. 16.26 seconds. Woo! Blistering! But despite how fast it isn't, it's genuinely peppy at lower speeds, and it's fun to pop around in. Now that you've seen the 0 to 60 run in its entirety, you're probably not going to believe me, but it's true! Top speed is limited to 75 miles per hour, and it will lose a little bit of speed up some hills, but mostly it's fine on the highway. And now that I've got the GPS race box out, I can see that 75 miles per hour indicated here is actually 70 miles per hour GPS. So that explains why everyone still passes me even when I have this thing pegged. Anyway, on the highway it doesn't feel skittish or unstable or any way unsafe. It feels perfectly fine. It's quite a bit more inverter whine than you would expect in most modern EVs, but this isn't a modern EV. When you put it in eco mode via the Prind E, top speed is now 50 miles per hour, and the already limited amount of power feels like it gets cut in half. I would never use eco mode, except that in eco mode, you get just a little bit more off-throttle regen. It's not nearly enough, but it is about twice as much as the almost nothing you get with the car and drive. This is my foot off the pedal now. I'll put it in eco mode, and regen increases a little bit. So I ended up treating eco mode as sort of a really clunky regen button. I just kind of pop it back and forth if I need a little extra regen. One more thing, this has creep. So if I let off the brake, it starts creeping forward. Now this is an early EV and I would expect it, but I still don't like it. Creep is gross. I don't want to emulate the worst part of an automatic transmission. This is a very early EV. So early, in fact, that when this started US production in 2010, the only other EVs you could buy were the Nissan Leaf, the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, the original Tesla Roadster, and I think that's it. No, the Zap Zebra doesn't count. In fact, this was so early that the charge port this uses, the now ubiquitous and common J1772 port, was only standardized a year before this entered US production. And now I wonder what charge port the Norwegian built cars from 2008 and 2009 used. Another clue this is an early EV, aside from the adorably tiny battery and short range, is some of the noises it makes. I've already mentioned the excessive inverter whine, but also modern EVs use electrically boosted brakes and electric power steering. This doesn't. Just like in a car with an engine for power brakes in this, it has a big brake booster drum powered by engine vacuum. But in the absence of an engine to create that vacuum, it has a 12-volt vacuum pump. This has hydraulic power steering, powered by an electric power steering pump, which does make a lot of noise, but it makes such an adorable noise I can't be mad at it. And also, the cooling fans for the air conditioner and the onboard charger are so incredibly loud, which means I haven't been able to keep the air conditioner on today, which sucks because it's hot and I'm dying. It also means that this cute little thing that only charges at a meager 14 amps is howling away at 70 decibels in your garage while it's plugged in. And remember, the battery isn't actively cooled. All this fan noise is just for the onboard charger. So why did I buy this? Because obviously I don't need another car. This is my 23rd car currently. I don't have a problem, you have a problem. Anyway, the previous owner of this had two Thinks, and one day he sent me a message, "Hey, I'm selling my Thinks. Do you want one of them? Why, yes I do. He had a blue one and a black one to choose from. The blue one had a software adjustment to make it slightly faster, has functional climate control, and is blue. So I went with this one. I paid $4,500 for it, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. I've been dailying this since I got it registered. It's great for quick trips to town. And nothing else, because it won't go any farther than that. In fact, the Think has almost entirely replaced the Solo as my fun little trip to town car. Almost entirely because the Solo doesn't have air conditioning, the Think does, and it's hot as frig outside. And also, absolutely everyone stares at the Solo, so I have to be in the right headspace to take it out. I don't have that problem in the Think. Most people don't notice it. Somehow. I'm not sure how that's possible given how cute, tiny, rare, and blue it is, but most people don't give it a second look. It's not quite to the level invisible that would allow me to pick my nose in it, but it draws dramatically less attention than the three-wheeled idiot here. And that's my Think City, my latest acquisition. Some cars I buy because I think they'd be interesting for video, and some cars I buy for myself. This one I bought for myself, and I've been driving it on the daily because I like it. Did I need another car? No, of course not. But when he told me he was selling this, I couldn't pass it up. What if it went to someone who didn't appreciate it? I couldn't do that to this poor little car. No, I don't have a problem. You have a problem. Okay, I'm gonna go inside now. It is so hot. My shirt is liquid.